Welcome into a Patriots Minicamp crossover. Patriots Beat, Patriots Daily. Alex Barth with Taylor Kyles and Brian Hines. We first off have to give a big congratulations to Mike Kadlick. Him and his fiance, now wife, Kate, got married over the weekend. So that is why Mike is not here with us. He is probably, out celebrating that.
No, I bet he's watching.
Hi, Mike. Congratulations. Hi,
Somewhere
Kate.
with a beer, making sure he's locked into this program.
So we'll start off congratulating them, but Mike did miss quite the practice today as the Patriots held their first of two minicamp practices. There will be a team event on Wednesday, but it will not be a traditional practice as previously scheduled. A lot of carryover from what we saw at OTAs. Mike Vrabel kind of told us that before practice, that this is a similar period. They just have a little more time on the field, and it's mandatory, so not perfect attendance today, but just about everybody was out here. No glaring absences. A lot of guys missing for injuries, things we knew about, but an opportunity to do some more. We saw them move into the red zone today, work a little more up-tempo, and that meant more showcasing for Drake Maye, who continues to make this sort of upwards trajectory, linear progress. I thought maybe not quite as good as he was last week on Monday, but still a very good practice, a step in the right direction. He looks more comfortable. He looks more confident. He looks more in a rhythm, Taylor.
I totally agree. Last year, when we really started to see the difference between Jacoby and Drake was in the red zone, because you could see when Jacoby was in, not necessarily his fault, but guys weren't always getting open, so it was a little harder for the offense to function. When Drake got in there, you saw the athleticism, the arm slots, and the accuracy all stood out. And like you said, it wasn't his last practice that we were here for, but I think that was one of the best practices that we'd ever seen from him.
Yeah.
And this one, it looked like he was making good decisions, not forcing the ball into bad looks in the red zone, which is obviously the most important thing, and not turning the ball over. It's kind of lost on me that he hasn't thrown an interception in any of the practices since the first time we were here. Now, obviously, we don't know what happens when we're not, but, continue to impress.
Yeah, he got them all out of the way in that first practice. 4 interceptions, and he was sharp in the red area to, again, back-to-back touchdowns, one to Travion Henderson out of the backfield, and then a nice corner to Kendrick Bourne. So I think every time, we've seen him 4 times now this spring, every time it feels like he gets a little more comfortable in this new offense. He even said after practice, I'm kind of bummed we only have one more practice, right? Because he's kind of catching that rhythm, and you're seeing that. So I think it's been good progress from Drake so far.
He even said that, right? That
He's bummed out. He has to go home. And he has to go get married, too. Everyone's getting married.
When the idea of doing anything outside of here came up, he was genuinely caught off guard and was like, wait, what?
There's life outside of football.
Live outside the facility.
Keep the main thing, baby.
And the other thing he talked about, well, it's getting on the same page with Josh McDaniels and getting more comfortable with the offense. The other adjustment that maybe hasn't been talked about as much because so much has been made about McDaniels' offense is getting on the same page with some of these new receivers. Like, he has new receivers in key spots, whether it be Stefon Diggs, who is still limited but was out there a little bit more today with them, whether it be the rookie Kyle Williams, who we'll get to a little more in a bit. There's that timing element, too, that comes with it, and I think you're seeing him grow with that. The one thing, just X's and O's wise, that stood out to me, we talk a lot about where he's at between the ears. Attacking outside the numbers is something I think he's done very well so far in this camp, and that's something that the Patriots can exploit, and they haven't necessarily been able to exploit in recent years.
Absolutely, and it was funny because he mentioned with Christian Gonzalez, he's like, yeah, I want to get him some work. I want to throw some back shoulders, and really whenever he does throw at Christian Gonzalez, it's a back shoulder. It's a little bit of a safer play. You're not leading and creating an interception opportunity, but yeah, it definitely feels like I was asking about the post-snap communication and what's that's been like, because in Josh McDaniels' offense, that's what everybody talks about and how hard it is to kind of get on the same page. And Drake downplayed it, said it's not too different from what he's done in the past. DeMario Douglas also mentioned that he loves this Josh McDaniels offense, said he's seen so many people succeed in the slot, and now doing it himself, he understands why. So it seems like really when it comes to processing what is heralded in this very complex offense, it seems like these guys are pretty much taking it in stride.
But then there's always old reliable Hunter Henry over the middle of the field.
Yep.
Had another today, pump faked the defender in the flat, fired it right in there, so he's still got that to lean back on.
All right, let's talk about speed. How about that? Because this isn't something we've talked about a lot with this team in recent years. But now, look, it is a passing camp. It is non-padded. It is non-contact. So it is set up for the faster players, the faster receivers, to make plays in this setting.
It's Saquon Thornton season.
I was going to say, we were joking before we came on. I think the Chiefs writers are getting all hot and bothered. They're doing Taekwon. They're doing Taekwon in Kansas City right now. We'll see what happens when the pads come on. But there were a couple guys that stood out today in that regard. With Pop Douglas, there was a, I think post corner he ran right where he got open deep from Drake Maye. But I don't know that there was one highlight. He just seemed busy. He was involved. He was open regularly. And then Kyle Williams flashed his speed. This was with Josh Dobbs. Go ball from the seam. Gets past. They were in his own coverage. Clears the linebacker easily. Dobbs did a good job of feeding the ball into him to kind of lead him away from the safety. But that's a play that in a game is a 50-plus yard touchdown. So either of those guys anything else stand out to you, Brian?
Kyle Williams, definitely, and that's the second time we've seen him have a deep connection with Josh Dobbs now in the 4 practices we've been to. So you knew he ran a 4.4. You knew he could stretch the field. We saw that at college. So the fact that he's doing that, he had another back shoulder ball. Taylor, we were talking in routes on air, which they're routes on air, but you're seeing him run those deep posts, clear things out, which you saw a lot on his college tape. So that speed, getting that into the offense, getting that at the X outside the numbers, I think that will be big for this offense.
And he doesn't really feel like a rookie. And I don't mean to throw him under the bus, but there are times where, like, even in warm-ups, there are some guys who've been here before where they'll make mistakes, and it's like repeated mistakes, and it does feel like, all right, this guy's going to have to get coached up. Kyle Williams has never felt like that to me. It feels like if he does have a correction that needs to be made, he does it, and coaches are always kind of showing him some love. I'm not saying there was a ton of that necessarily today. I didn't see any mistakes he made necessarily, but again, just as a team that last year had 2 rookie receivers that weren't able to do much of anything, between Kyle Williams and Efton Chism, another guy we might get to, they feel like professionals, which is a bit of a breath of fresh air.
So I was going to say, anything else from the skill position players? The other thing for me, they're in the red zone, throwing the ball to the running backs.
Yep.
A little more today. Travion Henderson caught a touchdown from Drake Maye on a Texas route. Lan Larison, awesome over-the-shoulder catch
on
a wheel route.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a little diving, little extension on a throw from Josh Dobbs. Drake Maye was good, like overall he was solid. Josh Dobbs had the 2 throws of the day, but the running backs were busy. A quieter day for Efton Chism, caught a couple passes, and he was out there. He got some work with Drake Maye, but not the volume we saw from him maybe last week.
Yeah, 2 catches in competitive team periods, and Kendrick Bourne was back when his big day. Chisholm's big day last week was when Kendrick Bourne wasn't here. Kendrick Bourne back, he was kind of running with that top offense, those top 3 receivers. So quieter day for Efton Chism, but Chiz, as Drake says, Chiz has caught like 50 balls in OTA, so Drake's taking notice, so you still see a lot of that ability out there.
Has Chisholm dropped a ball? I don't think any throw towards him has fallen incomplete.
Think of.
In my tracking, I don't have any. Maybe somebody else does, but again, like, that's very impressive. I don't care which team you're going against. You talk about making most of your opportunities. If the ball gets thrown to you and you never let it hit the ground, that's a pretty damn good start.
On the offensive line, I really liked that Mike Vrabel gave us an answer on the left guard position before practice, and the answer was there's no answer. And because we've been getting asked this, who's repping, who looks good, and it's too early. There's no pads, there's no contact, and it's kind of nice to not hear some like line fed to us, right? It was just straight up, hey, we'll see when the pads come on. And it was Cole Strange out there today. Now Tyrese Robinson and Wes Schweitzer both weren't here, so not as many options. And then on the right side, Morgan Moses was limited again like he was early in OTAs. He hadn't been late, but we saw DeMontre Jacobs at right tackle. But I just think I liked it. I had said I kind of wanted this to be the thing, and I like that it's out there now. Wide open competition at left guard. It's too early to kind of really start it, but I think they're going into the summer truly saying, we've got some bodies. We'll see who stands out, and maybe they add somebody else. Like, I'm not ruling that out either. It seems like it's truly wide open there, Taylor.
Yeah, no, 100%. And one thing, actually, just from the offensive line, Morgan Moses, I thought, participated more than he has in any other practice, where usually when they go full speed, Morgan Moses and Mike and Money would go out to the sideline. Instead, what we saw was a lot of Morgan Moses actually next to City So kind of interesting how that dynamic works. Maybe Morgan Moses is feeling a little bit healthier.
I thought he was out there a little bit for some of the full speed stuff last week.
Oh, maybe he was.
Yeah.
It's 76 and 75 also. They both wear those red unders.
Yeah.
Maybe I did miss a couple, but it was nice to see that Morgan Moses was active. And also a guy in this left guard competition. We brought up his name before, just saying keep an eye out. Caden Wallace, a guy who coming out of the draft was seen as someone who could kick inside in the pros. Just saying, watch out. It seems like Caden Wallace, especially considering it is a wide open competition, there's going to be days where guys aren't out here. Maybe Caden Wallace kicks inside.
Well, the thing that's going to help a guy like Caden Wallace or Jack Conley or even Marcus Bryant, when you're battling for those backup offensive line jobs, Marcus Bryant can play both tackles. Caden Wallace, if he can start getting some reps in at guard, now, okay, you can play 2 guard spots and right tackle. Jack Conley can maybe play all 4 positions. You got to play at a certain level, but he can maybe play all 4. That gives those guys an edge on a guy like Vidarian Lowe, who's only going to play left tackle, or DeMontre Jacobs, who's only going to play right tackle, because it saves you maybe keeping an offensive lineman or even 2. So that tells me they're really serious about finding a spot on the 53 for Caden Wallace, because he's probably not going to start. So unless maybe he wins at left guard, but like there's a chance he's not going to start. So okay, let's make sure he can play multiple positions so we can justify keeping him, because he's going to give us a backup in multiple spots.
I agree. Yeah.
And also, you talk about someone having the edge. Jack Conley
all over the place.
I don't even want to call him a dark horse at this point because right now I'd be pretty surprised if he didn't just find his way on the roster.
He's just like huge. Yeah. I mean, he
looks the part.
He
looks
absolutely
the part
looks the part. There was the first day of OTAs. I posted a picture of him and Will Campbell coming up the steps here, and people like freaked out. Like, wait, that's our first round tackle? He's so small. I'm like, no, hang on. You got to Google how big Jack Connolly is before you say that.
It's massive.
Right. He kind of makes Morgan Moses even. Like he's
they're at least comparable. And Morgan Moses is a massive. Morgan Moses makes Mike Nwenu look not quite as big.
6'7", 333 pounds.
I'm taking the over.
Connolly.
I'm taking the over on that. Honestly, let's move on to the defense. Defensive player of the day for me, and it was good to see this guy have a day because I think he's a good player. Hasn't gotten a ton of chances here the last couple of years, and that's Isaiah Bolden.
Yes,
made a really good play in the red zone. Read Josh Dobbs all the way. Dobbs didn't have anything downfield. Red zone downfield. Tried to check it into the flat to Travion Williams. And again, Isaiah Bolden read it all the way, jumped the route, perfectly timed it, would have been a pick six. Comes back a few plays later, has a pass breakup. We're also seeing him mixed in a little more with some of the kick return stuff, which is something we've been waiting for. Look, he's in a battle. It's a loaded cornerback room. There's not a ton of spots there. It's a depth spot. You're going to have to win it some other ways, but I thought he had a good day today.
He absolutely did. It was also really funny to see what happened after the interception because you had multiple offensive players who weren't in the drill chasing him. You had DeMario Douglas, Drake Maye got down there.
Diggs, right?
I think and that's the thing. Diggs
was moving on that knee.
If you're worried about how he looks, like that was one of the first times I think we've actually seen him go full speed because they don't want him to a lot of the time. And he caught up to Isaiah Bolden and punched the ball out, which was very funny. But I guess another position I'm kind of looking out for is that actually Christian Barmore. We got to speak to him after practice. He was talking about how people are starting to forget about him because of what happened last season. He wants to remind people who he is. He's excited to be in this defensive scheme where he's able to get upfield more. Said he was watching big athletes like Chris Jones, like Jeffrey Simmons, obviously, who's had experience in the system, DeForest Buckner, Cam Hayward, which is exciting. And I actually asked the question because there were times where you saw Christian Barmore in this kind of 4-3 front as pretty much a defensive end. So Mike Vrabel talked about his versatility, and early on I think we thought that Milton Williams was going to be the kind of Jeffrey Simmons type. As with Christian Barmore being a full participant, it feels like he really is going to be the cog of this defensive line. And one that Mike Vrabel said, like, hey, we spent a lot of money and resources on the defensive front. We expect that front seven to be productive.
So I wanted to get to that. Drake Maye looked good when he was throwing the ball, but there were times where he was certainly pressured and rushed, and this was the most active day for the defensive front. Now, obviously, there's the caveat of no pads, and those guys can't fully get into it. But, Brian, like, what do you make of a day like today where we saw a couple sacks, a few pressures, things like that? May had to maneuver himself in the pocket quite a bit, but it is in that non-padded setting.
Yeah, it's the passing camp, as they keep calling it, right? And it feels like they're working a lot of, like, second and third and long, so these guys definitely have the advantage. But I think it just shows, like, the potential that this front could have, right? We know Milton Williams and Christian Barmore, if they're at full force, that could be one of the most disruptive interior duos in the league. I think Keon White, you pair him with a coach in Mike Smith, who works with these bigger edge rushers. You see Keon just kind of sitting on the edge now most of the time, still has that versatility to kick inside. And then, Kayvon Chason got a pressure today, maybe would have been a sack. You still have Harold Landry in that mix. Like, I just think that group, if that reaches their potential, they could look like that on Sundays most of the time.
And Mike Smith is apparently someone that Mike Vrabel likes very much. It was Mike Smith and DeMario Douglas where when he was asked about them, the guy lit up. And he really respects Mike Smith as a pass rush coach, saying he's been able to show guys like different examples and ways that they can use their technique. I know he told us that he likes the big pass rushers, but he's worked with a ton of different body types and skill sets. So Mike Smith, don't sleep on him. I think if Keon White has his breakout season, Smith is going to be a huge part of that.
Let's hear from our friends at PrizePicks, and then we'll get back to it. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. This year's basketball playoffs are headed towards crowning a first-time champ in more than 50 years. Don't miss your last chance to cash in on history with PrizePicks. Pick more or less on player stats like points, rebounds, assists, and more for your shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The basketball playoffs are wrapping up, but the action is still heating up on PrizePicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite sports. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, let's put this together. Basketball championship, hockey championship. We got players to pick from both. How are we feeling about Tyrese Halliburton, more or less than 17.5 points?
I keep seeing memes about this guy, so I'm feeling pretty good.
All right, so that's a
What
more.
the Halliburton?
But what people don't know is that even though he hits all the big shots, Pascal Siakam is actually the Pacers' leading scorer. So we'll go Pascal Siakam more than 19.5. We should take one from the Thunder. Chet Holmgren, 15 points. They've held him in check. Should we go less? They hold Chet in check again?
I don't love the name Chet, so I'm going to say no.
Well, if you don't
Less.
love the name, then wouldn't that be less?
Less.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll go less. I guess we're picking the Pacers, which is bold. Let's go to hockey. Sergei Bobrovsky, 27 saves.
I like that name a lot.
Brian?
More.
They're going
Throw
to...
that Connor McDavid more than 1.5 points in there.
Yep.
That's always a lock.
We got to give one to Marshy after the game
Demon
winner.
Brad Marchand, more than 2.5 shots on goal. Say less with that one.
Oh, Brad
right?
Marchand.
Less
I've
than
seen
that?
his
No,
face
we're
before.
not doing. Well, no, you can't do less on that. It's a demon. You can only do
Yeah,
more.
I said more.
Oh, more. Okay, I thought you said less. All right, so we have Tyrese Halliburton, more than 17.5 points. Pascal Siakam, more than 19.5. Chet Holmgren, less than 15 points. Sergei Bobrovsky, more than 27 saves. Connor McDavid, more than 1.5 points. Brad Marchand, more than 2.5 shots. First, that is with the power play, $20 to win $990.
That's
There
how we
you go.
do it around
A very
here.
scientific lineup put together
6-time multiplier.
by our friends on PrizePicks. Now back to the show. Any other players that stood out to you guys today? Brian, we'll start with you that maybe we didn't get to.
I'll just stick with some defensive things.
Yeah.
Just like not standouts, but notes like secondary. Marcus Jones and Carlton Davis were back right in the mix opposite Christian Gonzalez. Marcus Jones in the slot. I thought maybe, we saw some Alex Austin in the slot if they wanted a bigger body. Like, could he overtake maybe Marcus Jones? But it was Marcus Jones. And then at linebacker, no Jelani Tavai. It was Christian Ellis. A little disappointed. I thought, maybe the door's open for a guy like Marte Mapu, who we finally saw playing linebacker, to get in there. He looked limited today. So, just health is always the thing with him. So those are two things just that caught my eye with that starting defensive unit.
Speaking of Christian Ellis, he actually had a nice play in red zone periods where I looked like Pop was Drake Maye's first read on an option route where usually you got a linebacker in slot and Pop Douglas. That's going to work out in your favor. Ellis actually took it away and forced Drake to throw into the back of the end zone to Kendrick Bourne. Now, I think one or two plays later, Ellis ends up getting beat by Travion Henderson on that Texas route, like you mentioned, but still a very impressive rep from Christian Ellis, who continues to flash in coverage. Another guy, just Stefon Diggs. He still looks good, and he's not going at full speed, but it cannot be emphasized enough. Like, no injury is the same, but Kendrick Bourne did not look this good in the videos that he posted, but we had to judge from videos because he wasn't out here participating. So Diggs, and I know Mike Vrabel is saying, like, everybody's really praising him as a leader, the work that he puts in, and there's no question that he's one of the guys that's absolutely leading this young receiver room. Actually, Pop mentioned Stefon Diggs and Matt Collins as leaders in the room before he mentioned Kendrick Bourne. Had to be reminded about Kendrick Bourne. He's like, oh yeah, no, he's one of those guys too. But I mean, if you're wondering, like, can I buy stock in Stefon Diggs? It seems like right now he's doing everything he can to put himself in that leadership position and also position to be a consistent contributor.
To go back to the defensive alignments, what do you make of where Anfernee Jennings is at? We saw him working a lot with that third defense. Now, Marcus Jones was out there too, but he was on the boundary, so maybe that was like starter Marcus Jones in the slot, third string Marcus Jones on the boundary, whatever. But like, I think Anfernee Jennings is a good football player. I know that they are going to play a different style of defense, but I feel like there's just things he does well that you want to keep him around. But is he a guy that, if you were to put together a roster projection today, would you have him on, Brian?
Ooh, putting me on the spot there. I don't know. It's tough with those, you have those tweeners, right? Like Anfernee Jennings, kind of Jelani Tavai fit in that category where it works so well in the Bill Belichick defense, but now we're not doing that, right? We're scrapping that. We're going to these 4-down fronts. We're going to this Mike Vrabel defense. So they've, Tavai was out there a lot next to Spillane, so it feels like maybe him more than a guy like Anfernee Jennings. But, with Landry and Keon White, if he's all on the edge and Chase on, and then they draft Braden Swinson, Jennings could be on the outside looking in there.
Taylor.
I thought this when Harold Landry was signed, to be honest, because when I was looking at where he was productive, I was thinking of him as a pass rusher, but he was also an elite run defender. And so when he was signed, I'm thinking, all right, you get a guy who's a good run defender but can also rush the passer. If you want to get Keon White out there, and then they signed Caleb Chase on, I was just thinking, okay, where does Anfernee Jennings play? Because usually on early downs, it's probably going to be Landry and White. We got out here. I actually am surprised by how much Caleb Chase on has been active.
not only is he going to make the team, he might be a starter.
Yeah, because I thought it was going to be Jennings in a rotation with Chase on, and then Keon White inside or what have you. That has not been the case, and there are guys where you can tell there's some kind of plan for them. Jennings is almost only repping across from Truman Jones, and I think that tells you pretty much everything you need to know, because as a guy where I love Anfernee Jennings, I think he is one of the most disruptive edge setters and run defenders in football, but he doesn't give you much as a pass rusher. And now that they have significantly better depth on the edge, and even young guys like Swinson and Ponder, who maybe they want to develop, I just think he's going to end up on the outside. He is on the outside looking in, it seems like, and I just don't see how he makes the team.
For what it's worth, he's been with that third defense. He's making a ton of plays. Mm-hmm. He's been very active, and he's been good throughout the spring. But again, it's just where does he fit, and does somebody get somebody's going to have to get left off there. And like you said, right now it looks like he's on the outside looking in. Before we wrap it up, Brian, both kickers 4 for 4, first time this spring. What do you think?
The big thing to me is just Andy Borregales, the consistency. And you heard the one time we got to talk to Jeremy Springer since they drafted him, that was the first thing he mentioned, the consistency.
Yeah.
We've been through 4 open spring practices. He's 15 of 16. And, they're kicking from range. They're out 50 yards to end a lot of these drills and periods. So just the consistency for him has been really impressive so far.
Taylor?
Consistency is very good. Obviously, you draft a kicker, you don't want to see the guy miss. And I remember the Chad Ryland experience. It was much, much shakier than this. So relative.
Chad Ryland had a very good spring in summer. He beat out Nick Foles.
Yeah, it wasn't until October with him that
once the regular season started, it fell off. He was very good in camp and everything, and then something just swapped completely in the season. But good start for Borregales.
Yeah. All right, well, that will do it for this crossover edition of Patriots Beat and Patriots Daily. These guys will have more coverage. Brian on patspulpit.com, Taylor on clnsmedia.com. You can check out my observations at 98.5thesportshub.com. We will have another show. It is going to, for minicamp, it is going to be timing dependent. It may be after Tuesday's practice. It may not be until Wednesday because we're going to do kind of a full spring recap, OTAs, minicamp, all of it. So if you follow Patriots CLNS on Twitter, if you subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass on YouTube, turn that notification bell on, you'll get notified. And there will be another show. We're just, how it is with us. The timing's a little flexible, as always. But until that next one, for Brian Hines and Taylor Kyles, I'm Alex Barth. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.